So welcome back to TNTV, where this week we not only have a fantastic tool, we're going to tell you this tool or share this tool because of a success story phone call that I had like half an hour ago.
Yes, hello there, and it's so great because we had actually a communication with someone this week which went, oh, that is the very thing that we need to talk about. So if this is the first time you've ever watched us, I'm Nikki V and this is my amazing husband Tony V, and we are the relationship couple.
Yeah, so it all started literally with the phone call today, which was almost like a phone call going, thank you so much. I finally got it. I finally realised that what you said, I've done it and it worked, yeah? And what's also true is there's a bit of a gap between hearing it intellectually and actually taking it on board. So we wanted to share with you because it is really one of the most difficult things to really take on board because it's more experiential than intellectual. So you're going to hear us say it, then you're going to go, I either agree with that or I don't agree with that, and that does make sense or it doesn't make sense. And then you're going to go, well, how do I do that? Which, of course, we'll do our best to answer. But it's only when you step into that place that you'll go, oh, my goodness, they're right. This really works. And that's what was at the heart of the phone call today.
And also, as we always say, this video is really for you if you're in a relationship that's not working. Either, you know, you're going through a bit of a rocky patch, or you're actually at that point where you're going, this isn't working, and one of you is going, I don't want to be there anymore. These distinctions, these things to do, these things to not just get intellectually, as Tony says it, but to actually use, you will be absolutely amazed how well they work. So what do I mean by work? They mean they have an impact on your relationship so that it will go from having you in a lot of pain to having you have that kind of connection and intimacy and that spark that I know that you had right when we first met. And actually, could it be that this even takes you to a higher level than that?
Yeah, so look, if there was a word that described femininity, if we had to get it down to just one word, and if there was another word that describes masculinity, and what we describe also is putting the word healthy in front of it, yeah? So if there was a healthy word that described feminine energy and the behaviour that comes from that feminine energy, we're going to cover women today and we're going to cover guys next week. So but really it's for both are for both, because it's about understanding, you know, what's true for the other person. So if you're a guy watching this, you need to step up and go, okay, I'm going to learn about women here. And if you're a woman here, you're going to go, oh my goodness me, somebody's like really tried this on, and these people were in an in-out situation, you know. This relationship was like, whoa, they're at the gate, if you remember the gate. And she's even gone beyond the gate, yeah, and come back from the gate. So it does happen. It's not often, but they did come back from beyond the gate and are now back together using the tools that we shared. And, you know, this is what she shared today.
Yeah, because they did have some time living separately, didn't they? And
indeed,
it's like they just went, okay, we don't think this is ever going to work, even though we had some great time with you. But now what's so fantastic is that they are actually back together, but not just back together putting up with it, they're actually back together, having a different experience of each other. So I think Tony's right as well. We said when we were talking about what we were going to talk about today, Tony's going, it's for men, it's that get over it guys moment when you've got to understand a woman. So that's why it's really important for men to listen to this, but also for us women to go, what is it? How can I actually be that way so that actually instead of trying to change this man, I actually have a different experience of him and have all that joy and pleasure and intimacy.
Yeah, so I'm going to share the word with you any minute.
Yes,
now.
okay.
I'm going to share that word. You know, get on the edge of the seat, because it's not a word you're going to be thinking is the word that describes the innate inner world of a woman. So if you are a woman, you're going, okay, maybe what is that word? Well, let me just also share with you, it's nothing ever to do with anything that the feminine bunch ever said. Because
you mean the feminists?
The feminists, the feminists. That's
actually, you're right. The feminine bunch, the people in the magazines who go, oh, it's all about what you wear and what your hair's like and how thin you are and all that. It's nothing to do with any of that.
And your Jermaine Greer bunch, you know, because really all of those people are not talking about feminism. It's like they've given the wrong meaning to the very word. Because for me, the feminist movement, and if you're a feminist, you're going to hate me for saying this, but I'm good with that, because trust me, I've helped women that have like had the flag, they've been out there marching, you know, and they've gone, you're right, you are right, because the result of walking out there with a banner, you know, has got good purpose. But you see, if you put the wrong twist on it in your energy, you're not going to get the results you desire to have. So what I always say, the feminist movement is much more about women utilising their masculine energy to get what they want. And that's not feminine energy at all. So what is feminine energy? It's the antipathy of all of that. And the word that we use is vulnerability.
Yes.
And, you know, as I say to the guys, look, if the innateness of your woman's femininity is vulnerability, it is something you're going to have to get over, because inside every woman, I don't care who they are or how masculine they've ever become, inside, even if it's buried very deep, is an innate feminine woman. The beautiful innate feminine woman that your masculine wants to connect with.
Yeah, and so many women believe that this vulnerability is like a weakness.
Oh,
it's actually innate in us. It's something. And it actually, because we try and kind of fight it, it creates the behaviour that we do, as Tony said, which is actually more masculine, which is actually trying to not be vulnerable. Whereas when we can understand as women, and as also for the guys listening, that they can understand that this is really going on in us all the time, if we can understand as women that we actually are vulnerable, and it's healthy, and it's okay, because it's actually who we are at our very core. And that kind of vulnerability has its place in every part of our lives, doesn't it? It's like we want to feel taken care of. Now again, as Tony said, you know, don't switch off if you think that, you know, what he said about feminism is hard, because it's also, when we start to talk about femininity and vulnerability, you know, we're really saying this is where we stop trying to take control of everything so that we feel safe, so that we understand we need to feel safe, but we stop doing some of that behaviour that's trying to control everything. And of course, when we try and control a man, the man absolutely hates it and does the behaviour that he does. And so, like, what did this lady say to you?
I just said to her, what was the catalytic moment for you? You know, that if you had to like really capture it in one sentence, what happened that turned it all around? And she said, well, she used the word the vulnerability thing. I suddenly understood what you meant. It's like I heard it, but I didn't really get it, and I didn't know how to do it. But I sort of got the message. And then one day I sort of realised, I don't know, she said, I don't know what it was really, but I realised that you're right. What I was doing was trying to control him, because I've got this vulnerability, and that vulnerability related to me as a fear. And because it was a fear, I was trying to get myself safe. Okay, now I'm going, look, this is all good. This is actually how human beings work, which most people don't know. So last week we talked about there being layers of a human. You remember? We had the logical level and then the chemistry level. But this innateness is like another layer. You know, it's like a part of us that is human at the core. Whereas what you've got today is 21st century, you know, mankind doing its best to deal with their fears. Now, the fear at the core is really your ego. So what ends up happening is your ego starts having a relationship with the other person's ego. Now remember that the ego, if its job is to keep you safe, in other words, stop you having this fear, what it does is it tries to control everything, as Nicki said, outside of itself. But more importantly, in an intimate relationship, it tries to control the other person so that it feels safe. So her catalytic moment was to understand or realise that it was her fear that was actually trying to control him. And then when she said, okay, so let me just listen up. What did Tony Nicki say that I needed to do? And remember, the whole letting go is the power of all of this. You know, letting go is almost one of the secrets to life. So when she let go of her fear, or, you know, as the famous book says, which, you know, is an okay book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, you know, she talks about this fear being a part of her, that when she let it go, in other words, she allowed herself to feel vulnerable, her behaviour became different towards him. Now, the magic of all of this is where she'd been trying to change him and he's moving away and, you know, like men behave badly. That's why the programme's called Men Behaving Badly. Men hate being controlled. So once she allowed herself, and her biggest point was it wasn't about him. When I realised I'd stop blaming him, when I realised I could step into this vulnerability, and what did that look like, I said to her, what did you do? What doing stuff did you do? She said, well, I stopped, you know, giving him helpful advice. I stopped trying to make everything okay in our world. In fact, I started to give him my problems, like you said.
That's brilliant.
You know, it's like, because a lot of women's problems are emotional problems, which a lot of men don't know how to handle. We'll deal with that another day. But of course, you know, she was frightened to give him the emotional problems because he didn't know how to deal with it. But of course, she said, look, the change in him is like unprecedented. So by not trying to change him, but by stepping into her own vulnerability, he changed automatically. That is the magic of being in your vulnerability in a healthy, feminine way. Now, as I say, men, you've got a part to play. You have to understand that for women to step in that vulnerability, it's a really scary place. It's a very scary place. In fact, I have a lovely story. Maybe we'll share that one day.
Yes.
It's a story for men to understand what it's like to be in a woman's body and really get a sense of what that level of vulnerability and why women stay, you know, in a place of fear, in the place of their ego, to stay safe. But of course, once they step into that vulnerability, the magnetism of the feminine to the masculine is like unstoppable.
Yeah, and so obviously we haven't got a load of time here today, but you know, just from a kind of what are you going to do? Because this lovely lady rang up, said like, you know, I had a lot of education because she and her husband came to us, didn't they, and had some private time with us and emergency support, as it were. And she said, I got it intellectually, but I didn't actually do it until now. And that's probably about 18 months ago.
Yeah,
isn't it? I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah.
In that time, they weren't together and all those sorts of things. But you know, if I had to give you something now that you could really, really use today, it is exactly what Tony said. It's being aware that you are innately vulnerable and being okay with that, and just going, look, when I start to feel unsafe or fearful or whatever that feeling is, if I can just be in touch with the, you know, what's going on inside of me, there are two things that I would love to give you just right now. And the one is to actually be okay in that place, and to sort of be comfortable with staying in that place. And you know, my best thing, and I may have mentioned this before, but I definitely have when I'm talking to single women, haven't I, is that like when you're in that place and you feel that fear, just to breathe. Just to breathe. And then I've always used to go, because I was extremely masculine in my time, so if I can do it, anybody can, just to let go and just to trust that everything's going to be absolutely fine. And then the other thing, which is what Tony said, which was absolutely amazing, which is what she said, which was lovely, which was that actually in that gap, instead of trying to control my everything and feel safe and actually try and control him, she actually gave him some of her problems. And of course then what we're going to talk about next week is why that is so brilliant for a man, that he actually takes that problem on board. He's Mr. Fix-It, Mr. Emergency Man, and he feels great about himself. Whereas of course the alternative is that he doesn't feel great about himself, because if we're trying to fill that gap, he goes, oh, she doesn't trust me, therefore she must think I'm not capable of doing it myself. So of course, so everything that we've talked about is it's just being okay to be in that place, leave the gap as we call it, and then just to recognise that he is absolutely, infinitely capable of doing everything and taking care of you as well.
Definitely. And you know, I remember standing at one of our stands at you know, an exhibition we did, you know, and women coming up and telling me, you know, their biggest problem was their man, you know, and I'm going, so what's the problem? And they go, he's hopeless. He's hopeless. Yeah. I could, if I had £1 for every time a woman's told me their man's hopeless, this would be, you know, a very large bank account I'd be sitting on. But you know, here's the point, men. We cannot put this onto the women. You know, it is a chicken and egg thing, actually. Yes. Which one goes first, you know? Well, we always say men need to go first. Yes. Men go first, you know? In fact, you see how much of a disease it is that men are now not going first. And, you know, we could, you know, go on about why that is for hours and hours and hours, but we sit and people watch all the time. We went to the cinema the other week. We got there early and we sat in the back row because, you know, we're young at heart, and we watched every couple walk in the cinema. And actually, I think there was only one guy, maybe two. Two
at the most, out of like 100 people.
Yeah, the cinema sort of filled up. Only 2 guys chose what seats the couple were going to sit in, if they indeed were a couple.
Incredible.
The other, you know, all the others were the women are deciding everything. So men, we have a job to do. We have to step up and we have to be leaders so that women can be vulnerable in the first place. So, you know, women, I do not want you to think in any way, shape or form it's all about you, because it's not. It is about men massively stepping up and taking the lead. But, you know, we have to do a bit, our own bit. Because one of the things the lady said to me, magically, she said, I realised it was all about me. It wasn't about him. But that's true for him too.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So we said this morning, didn't we? Who has to go? You know, people are going to ask us, always ask us, well, you know, who goes first? And we say, both of you.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
So,
as soon as you both take responsibility for your own experience, everything will change. But anyway, that's it on vulnerability being the natural, innate, feminine, healthy state. And that state will get you into much more connection and a 10 out of 10 relationship if you really practice it. Then that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about the secret word for men that would enable them to step up and take the lead and allow their woman to be in their feminine and move towards them with their lovely feminine vulnerability, where love making takes place. So yes, so us girls will be looking forward to that too. Won't just be for the guys. And don't forget to let us know how you're doing, and if you've got any questions, pop them in the box below. Indeed. So from me, Tony V, and the amazing, lovely, beautiful earrings today. Look at earrings. Nicki V. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.